This is the Extraordinary Podcast, and my guest today is Speech.
Yeah, man.
From Arrested Development.
Yeah.
How are you, my man?
I'm doing great.
Great to see you.
Great. Good to see you too, man. Appreciate
Thank you, holy cow, so much for taking the time to allow us to come down here and visit with you a little bit. And
Yeah. Welcome to Victory Spot.
I was gonna say, so we start off each episode. Where are we and what's going on?
So this is Victory Spot. It's my wife and I's art school. We teach young kids all the way to our oldest client, I think is 57, and our youngest is 4.
Wow.
And we've been here for 4.5 years now and learning, growing, and teaching the arts. So we teach drums, acting, dance, all the various instruments, bass, guitar, keys, vocals, you know.
But not just music. You do the acting and some
We
of
do
the
acting
liberal
and we
arts
do
stuff as
visual
well.
arts.
No kidding.
We teach horn. I mean, we have students that are taking, trumpet right now.
Well, and you guys have a resident artist right now, don't you?
We
You guys
do.
have
One of our resident artists is
Yeah.
Paige Summers. She's a renowned artist. She's done work for Lauryn Hill, of course, Arrested Development, myself, and many other famous people throughout the entertainment world. And just a wonderful resident artist here. And yeah.
Is she the one who did the murals? in
She
your
did the
wife's
murals
office?
of Michelle Obama. She did Tracy
Amazing.
Chapman. She did Jennifer Lopez in there. Oprah Winfrey. I mean, she's
Incredibly
yeah.
talented. That's a beautiful. I was talking to Tiffany when we got here. I was like, that shouldn't be on a wall. That needs to be in a frame. That needs
exactly.
to be like high.
You're
like,
right. You're
just
right.
to be on a wall isn't quite adequate enough.
I agree with you. I
for that
totally agree with
quality
you.
of
She's
work.
that good. Yeah, she's
amazing.
brilliant.
So we're at Victory, but this isn't obviously where you get to spend a little bit of time here at the Victory spot.
Yep.
But you also have a lot of other things going on right now in particular.
Very true. Very true.
So let's kick it right off with what you've got coming up about to get released.
Well, we have. I have my first ever documentary is called 16 Bars, and I went into a jail in Richmond, Virginia, and I worked on music with inmates in this jail, and it was one of the most gripping and amazing times of my life. I left there thoroughly inspired to do more for those that are in the prison justice system, and we learned more about what they wanted to say, because this music really highlights their journey and their convictions.
It's a chance to kind of give them a voice.
Without a question, it gives a voice to the voiceless. And many people in the prison system are really neglected. You know, it's sort of that population that's invisible. And this movie is a documentary. It's a full-length documentary that gives voice to them.
Excellent. That's amazing. Well, and I was listening to some of not the soundtrack, but obviously with the trailer, you get to check out some of the songs. And man, that gospel song that you've got as the main theme, that thing is moving.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like a gospel song. I want to lay my burdens down. And it's a powerful song, especially coming from men in the jail, and many of them are about to be sent to prison. And we follow 4 men's story for about 2 years straight. I mean,
that long?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Exactly.
How long did this whole project take?
It took probably about, I'm going to say 4 years.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because, when I first got the idea to go into the jail, you had to get tons of permission, and it's not usual that you're able to go into
All that
a jail.
red tape.
And they don't have a studio, so it's a makeshift.
Right.
Yeah, it's a makeshift studio. So, you're trying to get endorsements from various, recording companies, Pro Tools, and, percussion
for the
companies,
funding and
mic
everything.
stands.
Yeah.
You're trying to get everybody to participate. And we actually did. We got a lot of people to participate and donate various things. And then we made a makeshift studio. Then we recorded. I mean, it was a huge process, and knowing that we were going to write a record from this makes it tough, because, these men are in prison and they're not supposed to make any profits.
Right.
From
Well, that was one of
being
the
in
questions
prison.
I had
And
about
so,
how
yeah,
they
so
deal
that's
with
a
all
lot of
that.
red tape, a lot of contractual understandings to try to make sure that we're following the law, and at the same time we're giving them an opportunity. So it was intense.
That's wild.
Yeah.
What was the most exciting aspect of that, or the most rewarding part of that project for you personally?
For me personally, it helped me understand the complexities within the prison system. All the sides, whether it's the people that are locked in there with nonviolent crimes, they really are not supposed to be in there, in my opinion.
I agree.
These men and women are put away with people that have done violent crimes, and they really should be in, mental health facilities in some instances, health facilities to get off drugs in other instances, and they're not supposed to be locked up in prison. And there's a lot of people in that situation, and we've got to change the laws so that they can be freed, because it's just unright. So I think that's the biggest thing that I left with.
The system is a little bit messed up. There's no
yeah,
question
not even a
about
little
that.
bit. It's
a lot
actually,
messed up.
it's very messed up. It's the hugest incarceration program on the entire planet. And so United States, I believe, 5 to 20% of the world's population, and we have the largest prison population.
Well, we certainly have the largest ratio of people in behind bars to the overall population than any other civilized country, for sure. And that's a major, major problem, without question. So you were at a jail. You were not at a prison. There's
Correct.
a significant difference between the two. How did you go about, because I actually have my own little pet project of something that I'm got squirreled away. But so from a personal standpoint, how do you go about determining jail versus prison and the red tape between those two? How do you figure all that out?
Yeah, well, it took a lot of time, and it took a team. I really have to give props to Resonant Films, who was my partners on this film, and in particular Sam Bathrick, who is the director on this film, and my other manager, who was also the third partner, Joe Lamont. We really had to work hard. First of all, we saw this particular jail on Lisa Ling's This Is Life program on CNN, where she had a daddy-daughter, she covered a daddy-daughter dance. And it moved me, because I know jails generally don't look at their population as human enough to enjoy that type of interaction. What tends to happen is they get pressure from political forces that say, when you're in jail, you're not supposed to enjoy these types of things. This is punishment. They shouldn't have done the crime. They need to do the time. And it's this sort of cut you off type of thinking generally with some populations. And this particular jail had a totally different reform program that included the fathers of children being able to unite with their daughters and have a moment of dignity with their daughters and family members. And I looked at that and I said, wow, we really need to get into that particular one, because whoever's in charge of that, and I learned it was a man named C.T. Woody, Sheriff C.T. Woody, and his assistant, Sarah Scarborough, they had a vision. And so I said, that's who we need to reach out to first, those types of people. And we did, and it worked out. But over time.
I wonder how you could recreate that again. Like, how could you, and not necessarily
nationally
making a movie, but how do you get leadership to have that kind of mentality to allow for opportunities? Because, good Lord, isn't that what we need?
Exactly. Well, I think what people need to see is more films. And first of all, see this film, 16 Bars.
Absolutely.
Right.
First and foremost.
And projects like this help to make people more aware that, number one, you can do this. Number two, how it does help for inmates to express themselves in other ways. One of the biggest stats that most people probably don't know is 95% of the inmates in any jail or prison will be released to come back home. So they'll be coming back to our communities, wherever you live. And we have a choice as a society and what we want them to come back as: better criminals or more reformed human beings. So what happens inside of that jail or prison is what we, as voting public and putting pressure on this entire system, we can have a play in how that goes, and we want to make sure people are reformed. And so it's not a matter of just punishing them. It's a matter of a punishment, but also a reform apparatus so they can come out as better human beings. And that's to me what this movie highlights.
And it definitely, obviously we haven't seen it yet because it's not...
October 5th, it comes out in Atlanta. We're premiering it. And
this is is your chance to go check it out. And it's also premiering in a couple other places as well.
Oh, no doubt. In fact, it'll be all over the nation in November. But in October, we're doing some special screenings and in Atlanta, which I'm excited about because
it's hometown.
Yeah, it's like home for me. And we're doing that on October 5th. We're partnering with the Civil Rights Museum here, the Center for Civil Rights and Human Rights. So it's going to be a pretty big deal.
I'm really excited about that. That's going to be very exciting.
Thanks,
very cool.
man. I appreciate
very
it.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so we talked about 16 Bars a little bit, but you've also had another documentary series. I guess documentary series would be the right way to call it.
Yeah.
That came out just before this, and that's actually out right now that people can go take a look at. You want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. I did a mini series called The N-Word Factory. I'm not using the total word, but it's Nigga. And in essence, there has been a 400-year marketing campaign to demean the image, but also the humanity of Black people in this country. And anyone that studies history, you'll know this, but to be honest, I think most Americans don't know it. So this film helps to document what has happened over the last 400 years. The reason that this marketing campaign was waged was really in order to justify slaves, Black slaves, in a country whose biggest principle was all men are created equal and that we all have this pursuit of happiness, when in truth, a large population of America from its founding did not have those rights. And so in order to justify that, there was these campaigns and this sort of movement to dehumanize them so that they're not fully human. So don't worry, that's not part of what we're talking about here. All men are created equal, but these 3/4 of a human types of people, or what have you, 3/5, they're not fully human. And so we don't have to, really worry about that. And so from the foundings, those types of things were set into place. And
what I found compelling about it as well is there's so much that just on a periphery, when you're not paying attention, you're just kind of oblivious to it all. You don't realize how much is just this little underlying current, these little underlying premises that are just kind of almost snuck in there without you really realizing it. But it manipulates your opinions and it manipulates your perceptions on things. And it certainly can have a detrimental impact for sure.
It does, not only for people in America, but people all around the world. And that's one of the things that I've been able to see as I travel. So I travel everywhere. I mean, we go to Australia, Africa, Europe, Canada, Asia, all over the place. And unfortunately, one of the only introduction to Black people that most people around the world that aren't in a Black, nation or country see is some of the programming that America puts out. So if you're going to see
stereotypical image,
exactly, you're going to see stereotypical images, whether it's through rap videos or whether it's through, Housewives of Atlanta or Love and Hip Hop or whatever. You're seeing Black people for the first time and not having met any, and so your perception of them is what you're seeing on TV, and then that's the worldwide perception.
And the reality TV shows just kill me. Those ones,
exactly.
I mean,
I agree.
The music
Most
industry obviously
horrible.
is certainly bad about that, but then if you look at what reality TV has done to just everything, the way that they've just trashed down.
You're right. It's definitely a dumbed down industry in general. The truth is, though, there is diversity in the reality TV show. For instance, with white families, you will see reality shows that are based on cooking, or not just white families, but white people. You'll see shows based on cooking or fishing or mining or scientists or nature or little people or, literally.
Right.
These are all real shows that exist.
Sure.
Whereas for Black people, it literally gets to be very narrow. You're really talking about Love and Hip Hop, Atlanta Housewives, and the like. And it becomes
that
very
genre
stereotypical, strictly like gold chain, gold teeth, ratchet, throwing this, throwing that, cuss words. It's just, that's pretty much it. And it stops there.
So what do you think the answer is to some of these issues that we're struggling with like that? Like you spend a pretty decent amount of time dealing with the hip hop industry and having to fight those stereotypes, and certainly you have to deal with it in other industries as well. What do you think some of the solutions might be?
To be honest, the solutions always happen to be the same thing, which is just truth. Speaking the truth about things. It helps intelligent human beings get a better perspective and understanding. So I think people want, or generally people want to see things get better. And what I've always learned is that the devil is in the details. So you got to get into some of the details of how these things have been built, why these things have been built, and then start to deal with, healing from it. Because if we don't understand why and how, then we'll never really heal from it, because we're going to belittle the impact of it. And so it's as similar as health. When someone has a health issue, if you don't diagnose it first and understand what you're battling, there is absolutely no way you're going to be successful in defeating it.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
You got to know what you're up against.
You got to know what you're up against. Yeah.
Certainly. I'm going to shift gears a little bit on you here. The music industry, and hip hop certainly is a part of that, has changed so much since your first exposure to it. And what I'm fascinated, or what I think a lot about, is how musicians can make a living anymore these days as musicians, with the way that content has changed, the way that you access music, the way that you even participate with it, all that. I'm curious about what your thoughts are on the future and how people will make a living at this in the future, because I worry about that, quite frankly.
I think that's a wise worry.
Because imagine if we lost some of that.
We've lost a lot of that.
We already are, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that musicians have to become, and us artists in general, have to become a lot more active in creating platforms that really celebrate the creatives. You know what I mean? So you have to get active in that regard, because, to be honest, it's been hijacked. The music industry and music and business was never super friendly to the artist. Even way back in the day, it never was super friendly, but it was a lot better than it's become now. And in truth, the high tech industries really had no clue about the music industry, has therefore, and since then, I should say, hijacked it. And now it's worse than ever as far as how much musicians get paid. It's the lowest ever. It's ridiculous comparatively. So yeah, there is a reason to worry. I think that as we hold politicians that do have some control over the laws accountable to other issues, we got to also get into this realm of creatives being able to make money off of their creativity. And that has been lost in the shuffle. I mean, it's not even a discussion in the present, campaigns that are going on now. It's not even a discussion. I mean, it's more so about privacy and huge controls and things like this of mega tech giants. But it's not even talking about the creatives getting any more money from it. So we've got to hold people's feet to the fire in order to get things to change.
Yeah, it's weird because you have this weird dynamic now. You have platforms where it's easier for Joe Schmo on the street to get something out there and to put something out there. But the truly talented people that really have a gift for this, and like people like you and Jason and even Mike Cat, who are musicians through and through to the core. I mean, that's just who you are.
Exactly.
All of that extra peripheral stuff now has made it even harder, I feel like, for somebody like you guys to get your vehicle out there, because like you guys have 2 new albums that have come out, and like and I'm a fan, and I hadn't even, and shame on me, I hadn't even listened to them. But like when I realized that they had come out, I'm like, there's a free Arrested Development out there right now that I can go listen to that I didn't even and I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself, well, gosh, if I'm a fan and I missed it, how many other people that need to hear this kind of stuff aren't hearing it? So
true.
What are your thoughts on, like, how do you, with everything in this so fast, the Instagram society, and you're gone 24 hours later, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant stuff you just brought up, and it I wish there was a sexy short answer, but the truth is that...
That's right, we got time.
Okay, good. The truth is there's a 1996 Telecommunications Act that Bill Clinton signed into law, which actually allowed for huge conglomerates, corporations, to become huge conglomerates and buy up local marketplaces in all these various fields of video stations, radio stations, the newspaper. So in venues, all one corporation can own all of that stuff now. Well, what makes that significant to what we're talking about is that less and less people are controlling way more of the content that we are getting. It's the same with the food world as far as agricultural foods that we're getting, so on and so forth, news that we're getting. So these huge conglomerates is a huge problem because what used to allow a Mudcat or a JJ Boogie and Nanya Na, Fire the Knife or Arrested Development become more accessible to the large crowds out there is activists like yourself or myself or others could say, hey, no, I'm going to break this record in Atlanta. And if it breaks in Atlanta, then it's going to break over in Alabama and Tennessee and on and on. Right. So it started to spread throughout the nation. That's no longer the case. Now you have a huge conglomerate that's deciding playlists somewhere in Texas that actually affects most of the entire nation all at one snap of a finger. So you have, I talk about this in Factory, I think part 3, which is coming out in a week. So we talk about the fact that 232 executives are in control of literally 230 million people's households of what we're going to listen to, what we're going to watch. Crazy. So think about it. 200 and something people are in control of what we're going to basically listen to. That's ridiculous. And that should never happen. Yeah. And it's happening. So we've got to, get active in changing that.
Okay, so there's 2 points that you dove into that I want to cover real quick. I want to make sure I don't lose them. All right, so the first one, I'm going to give you a little bit of a hard time. So part 3.
Yes.
Coming out.
Yes.
It's on its way.
It's on its way,
When are we going to get it?
That's a good point. So part 3 has been tough, man, because...
Well, you talked about it a little bit. I saw your episode.
Yeah, I would to give an update. Yeah. So In Factory has part 1, part 2, and those have done great. We've gotten over 1 million views on those. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. Part 3 was tougher for a few reasons. One is I was on tour with Arrested Development, going throughout the world, and so I couldn't focus. Number 2 is I own a couple other businesses. So we're at one right now, the Victory Spot. But even more important than this one, my wife and I own a corn roasting business, and it has expanded, which is great. So we've been like going from one particular festival that we used to sort of make that our hub to all of these different festivals throughout the world, throughout the nation. And it's been tough to juggle all the balls. So in Factory 3, the last episode, to me, the most powerful episode, comes out in a week. So I'm grateful for that. So I'm grateful that it's finally coming out. But
I'll tell you,
a lot of people screaming for it.
I've been on pins and needles, and I'm sitting here and I'm looking for it, and I'm like, it's got to be here somewhere. And then I see the part 3 thing come up, and it's
exactly
giving a little bit of an update. So
thank you.
But I think it probably is playing to your advantage because if it's anything like me, you've got people like just chomping at the bit. Yeah, we're all
you're right.
in great anticipation. So that's probably a good thing.
It wasn't intentionally, trust me. I would have had it out already 2 months ago.
Okay, so the other part that you mentioned, I want to go back to is the politicians, and you got to spend some time with the Clintons.
I did,
and got to support them
during Bill Clinton's re-election campaign, and during Hillary Clinton's book tour. She had a book called "It Takes a Village," and I had a song called "It Takes a Village to Raise a Child," which is actually an African proverb. And so she heard about my song.
Awesome.
And so her office called here, actually, because this used to be, before it was Victory Spot.
Right.
It used to be it used to be called Vagabond. And it's where my office was. So she called.
Your management team was all here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So, and the reason why I asked that, I don't like to get into too much politics with this show, but one of the human beings that absolutely fascinates me is Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton, yeah. Me too.
And what is so compelling to me about him is his ability to relate.
Yeah.
And his ability, like I've heard stories from Republican right-wing guys that are like super conservative, and then they got in his presence and they just couldn't help but be enthralled with the guy. Wow. Did you get to have that experience with him?
It's funny. I didn't get a chance to really talk face-to-face with Bill Clinton. However, I did with Hillary. So Hillary and Chelsea Clinton and Al Gore, we were together every day for a whole tour.
That's the tour.
So that's Bill Clinton. My wife and I went to
taking care of the nation. And
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, so he was president. He was running to be, the second term, and we were invited to the inauguration and all of that. But I never had a chance to sit face to face with Bill and talk with him. I was fascinated by a lot of the same qualities that you just said. Just seeing him from afar. But with Hillary, I actually saw a lot of those same qualities. It doesn't reflect when she runs her campaigns, but when I was with her, super down to earth. And Chelsea, extremely down to earth, very cool, very relatable. But for some reason, and I've met a lot of humans like this, where when the lights come on, they flip a certain switch. For some reason in their mind, they feel like they can't be themselves.
They're on stage.
They need to be on stage. And it worked against her in every instance where she does that.
Well, it's hard. Some people just have that. Yeah, I've seen it as well, where you just can't turn it off.
Yeah, you can't turn it off. It's like you turn on something and it changes,
So let's go. We'll get into a couple of other different subjects, if you're okay with that. Now that we've kind of covered some of the stuff that you have going on, I want to dig a little bit deeper, if that's all right with you. You have a hit song, Tennessee, that everybody knows. That everybody loves, obviously. And shout out, by the way, heard you guys on the Falcons.
I heard about that.
They were playing terrible, but to hear you guys coming across the thing was really cool.
Yeah, I heard about that. Some fans and friends wrote me about
so make sure that check's in the mail.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But back to Tennessee. Tennessee was based on the death of your grandmother and your brother in a very short amount of time. And I really spent a lot of time learning about the lyrics and analyzing some of that. But I wanted to talk about your grandmother, Ardenia.
Yeah, Ardenia.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
She was a huge impact on your life. And
huge.
The way that she impacted your life are things that I hold very important to raising kids and stuff like that. Could you tell me about an experience that you had with her that made a meaningful impact in your life?
Well, there was a lot of them, but just some of them was the fact that she was a very self-determined woman. I mean, she was living in the most rural area that I've ever witnessed. I mean, it's just well water, no electricity, outhouses. You're familiar with all of these things?
Yeah.
Okay, so outhouses, no plumbing and all of that.
Plumbing.
So we lived in very rural conditions, but she had her own food that she grew in the back. She had an incredible relationship with other neighbors that had other foods. And so there was a lot of bartering going on, a lot of community just gatherings where people would sort of exchange foods and vegetables and stuff like that. She knew how to kill her own meat, and whether it's hogs or chickens and what have you. She was an incredible shot with a rifle. And she just was an all-around self-determined chick, and older woman though, so I shouldn't call her a chick. But my grandma was just that woman. And at the same time, she was just extremely loving, but firm on me. And she taught me things without being direct. I mean, she just had me around this atmosphere of get out there, do the hard work, learn about nature, learn about God, learn about spirituality, and learn about humanity. And these were the types of things that just she surrounded me with it. And this was in the rural town called Glimp in Tennessee. And the reason I wrote that song was because she passed away, and I got that call that nobody likes to get. And right after we all went to Tennessee to celebrate her life, that same week, my only and oldest brother, Terry, died as well. And the last place I saw both of them was in Tennessee at the funeral.
And I wanted to ask you about your brother, because your grandmother certainly was obviously older.
She was older.
And advanced in age, so that wasn't completely unexpected. But your brother kind of was.
Oh, very.
It was something to do with asthma? Or?
Yeah, he had asthma his whole life. And he was a doctor, though, when he died. And he was delivering babies and OBGYN. I'm just very, excited about this new career that he had finally gotten to. And he was only 6 months a doctor when he died of an asthma attack. And, they say, a lot of people say that, plumbers are the worst plumbers for their families, and doctors are the worst as far as taking care of themselves.
Right.
And so he was in that category where he was busy at the hospital delivering people's babies, and he felt an asthma attack coming on, and he kept ignoring it, and just, let me just finish this, do that, do this. Then when it finally got to a place where he couldn't ignore it, he called his fiance, Wendy, to come pick him up, and he died in the car on the way home. And it's one of those things.
But he was already at the hospital?
He was at the hospital.
Wow.
He took some medicine, and his thought was, I'll get this medicine to help open up my lungs in a minute. I just got to do this first, do that first. He took that medicine, and that medicine takes about, I'd say, 20 minutes or so to kick in. And of course, breathing is
you can't wait 20 minutes to breathe.
You can't. So
yeah. My goodness.
He overestimated, what the medicine was going to do, and underestimated how bad it was. And it was just that moment of time. 29 when he passed.
Wow. Mm.
Yeah.
That's unreal. So, you talked about in one of your interviews about your grandfather's passing and what that experience was like at that funeral. And then you also talked about your grandmother's funeral. And that was a tremendously different experience.
Yeah.
I wonder, how do you want to be remembered?
I mean, honestly, I've sort of surrendered because I've seen so many unfair remembrances of people. So, like you just mentioned, Guitar Watson. I don't know.
Guitar Watkins,
Beverly
yeah.
Watkins. I hope that people remember her for all the great she's brought. But I've seen many times in this planet that it doesn't always go that way, and that I've become surrendered that, I hope that people see the contributions that I've, put out there, and they see the heart of where I come from. But I do also know that sometimes it doesn't go that way, and I'm surrendered either way. So as far as how I want it great. Let's smile, let's remember, let's have fun about what speech brought to the world. But I'm also, and it's not even pessimism to me. I think it's just a realist to know that, you never know.
Yeah. Well, and you know that as long as you're doing your thing and you're headed in that direction,